And ladies and gentlemen, we are live once again. How's everybody doing today? Ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and all the ships at sea. This is your somewhat savvy politically minded host, Abby Kaufman. And we're here today. We've got a special guest coming on in a little while. And he's Donald Torres from Stanton, California. And he's an incumbent city council member, I believe, from District 1. And we're looking forward to hear a little bit more about some of the advantages. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Stanton has around 40,000 people there, and I'll be curious to hear from Donald what sort of priorities he has for Stanton, and how do we get there. And in the meantime, feel free to give us a call, 949-629-3820, and let us know what's going on in your life. I'm sure everybody noticed gas coming down a little bit, but it's not where it was. And I doubt you'd be able to turn back time, precisely. It would be nice, but I hope nobody's actually getting their hopes up in light of the current realities as they exist. And as you guys know, coming up Saturday is July 4th, 2026, which is, in case you've been, ripping and going to sleep, it'll be the 250th birthday of the United States. July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence was signed. And with that, the Revolutionary War was fought. We fought England for independence. And, of course, you hear things like taxation without representation and whatever else. But I want you to kind of go back even a little bit before that. Let's go back to maybe 1607. And that would be when the colony of Jamestown was founded. That was the first colony in the U.S., but the colonies were always about religious freedom. People felt stifled having to belong to the Anglican Church, and they didn't like Henry VIII's affair, and they didn't like the Archbishop of Canterbury being murdered. And so guess what? They protested, which is how we get the word Protestant. And those guys were the first ones to really articulate that freedom of religion. They didn't, don't forget the 1607, so it's not like they had the knowledge base that we had to draw on. But, even so, the notion of people living from different backgrounds as one new country. Don't forget, every other country you were kind of born there. The French were born French, and the Germans were born Germans. But the U.S., didn't have anybody, at least not yet. Well, we had the Native Americans, and God knows those guys should have gotten citizenship and ownership way before we did. But, that kind of reminds me of the, the Native Americans were clearly treated poorly. We did, in fact, hunt them like animals. It's not every Native American was friendly, but if you saw opposing people taking up your resources, your land, killing your animals, you would probably be a little testy about it too. So anyway, like I said, they were here first, so clearly they should have some sort of priority. But it's one of those things where the meek might inherit the earth, but they can have a heck of a time getting the title to it. And that's the one thing the colonists brought over, was the notion of title and succession of ownership. So once they figured out that there was no formal registered ownership, of course, the deed system transferred, and the rest is kind of history. But that is just so important to remember that, even though it is the 250th birthday of the United States, there were less than stellar moments, and I do think that was that and slavery and Jim Crow. We've had a lot to apologize for. However, this is July 4th, and it is supposed to be a celebration of the founding of the country, and I think we ought to try to honor that. And as a matter of fact, just from it's really easy to look around and find things not to celebrate, or things not to observe, or just reasons to not be nice to people. And clearly, we honor the root cause of it. And why I think that on July 4th, 2026, as we celebrate the document that gave us our freedom, I think that we need to consider the freedoms that are actively being restricted. And I think once you examine the our freedoms being actively restricted, you'll decide to come out and be a good old Democrat. If you haven't been a Democrat yet, we've got a really big tent. Come on down. We'd love to have you. And the truth of the matter is, this is one of those times where we really need all good thinking and all right minded people to come to the aid of their country. Because the way I see it, um, the current administration just distorts things. And I'm sorry. Let me go back. The current administration just lies about things. They don't just distort. They outright lie about the stuff. And I'm sure Donald Trump woke up in the morning with those reflecting pond blues. Um, but don't forget how we got there with that simple thing: a remodel or repaint of the reflecting pond. Well, sounds good on paper, right? So, I'm sure the Republicans kind of thought, well, as we're talking less than $1 million, we'll let them do it. So, of course, there's no competitive bidding. It's Trump's pool guy, right? So when the pool guy, of course, messes up, what's Trump do? Just pay him a little more in a non-competitive bid, $18 million. As people gather on the mall for July 4th, it's clearly a mixed bag. If you're on the mall now and attending the Great American State Fair, just out of curiosity, give us a call, 949-629-3820. And we'd love to hear from somebody who's actually got boots or feet or Birkenstocks or whatever is on the ground up there. And like I said, I had actually looked in the New York Times for the opinion section, and they asked their columnists to write what will we celebrate, or what would they celebrate about the country. And it was there were some interesting answers. And as much as we can celebrate, as a matter of fact, I think Tom Friedman's column was the first one to write about it. And like I said, the opinion section had its own title. It's America's birthday. What are we celebrating? And Tom Friedman wrote a really good editorial about it. It's called Our Unofficial Anthem. And he goes to say that there's two kind of parts to, if let's revisit the notion of America first. And Friedman contends that America needs to be first into corralling as many nations as possible into a global coalition or brotherhood, maybe, designed to ensure that the maximum benefits and that we get the maximum benefits and that we cushion the worst impacts. And these challenges just kind of call us together. But Friedman's larger point is that he took seriously the notion of e pluribus unum, out of many one. It's on all the currency and all that stuff. And so Friedman is celebrating the fact that despite everything, America has endured for 250 years, and it's endured, as well as can be expected. Like I said, we've had our ups and downs, and this obviously does not feel like a particularly high moment. If you feel like it's a particularly high moment, give us a call at 949-629-3820, and we sure would like to hear the reasons for your optimism. And in that kind of America's trademark, optimism and the can-do attitude. Well, I submit that it traditionally has been, because those sorts of things were usually rewarded in some way. It's only since we have an let's let's go back. It's all because we have a subhuman, orange-tinged creature inhabiting the White House. Do we disavow things like climate change and every other cabinet office that's been hollowed out by Trump? But still look around us. There's no civil war in the streets. People aren't the have-nots aren't marching with guns or knives or torches into the good neighborhoods. As a general proposition, America is a fairly peaceful people. And I'm sure a lot of that is from having a distorted sense of moral superiority. Uh, but it's also because uh, we just, we need to be a brotherhood. And I think that was Friedman's overall point was he was talking about being in a car and driving, and the Star Spangled Banner came on. And the line that stuck with Friedman was, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. So Friedman has analogized that to the overall country to say that, despite everything, we are still a relatively peaceful people and America has endured. Sure, there's work to be done, but that's why we're here. That's exactly why Democracy Radio Network is here. We are here to facilitate change, and we are the most friendly, supportive Democrat platform you will ever meet. We are genuinely happy, and as a matter of fact, I get up in the morning. My goal is to see what I can do with DemocracyRadioNetwork.com to help elect Democrats, and more Democrats. That's our reason for existing. So I'm going to ask our studio audience to kind of think for a few minutes, and if you have to give us a call, 949-629-3820, and we'd like to hear what you would like to celebrate about the country. And would that be brotherhood and getting along? That's really an aspiration that is worth working really hard toward. I think everybody knows that at this point that we do need to regain our leadership position, and we need to regain it from a position of credibility where people can trust what we say. And I'm going to kind of segue into that. I want to kind of say a few words about our guest today, Donald Torres. And Donald is running for City Council and District 1 in Stanton, California, and he's an incumbent. So I can't wait to hear what he's got planned for Stanton, as well as Stanton, I think, has 39,000 or 40,000 people or something like that. And it'd be nice to hear from Donald what some of the advantages are of working within a relatively small community. You would have to believe that it's a much more neighborly and friendly place, being that small. And you can only hope that they appreciate having, decent council members. But what I specifically want to say about Donald is he brings things to the table that, even though they're intangible, they're crucial. And he brings things like honesty and integrity and low character and credibility. And you guys know I beat credibility to death, but don't forget, credibility comes from the root that essentially means worthy of being believed. And I'm going to let that kind of stew for just a second, but worthy of being believed. Now, we can contrast that with things that we hear daily that aren't worthy of being believed. But that's not the case with Donald, and certainly the Democrat candidates that I run into. I mean, everybody is pretty much aware of the all hands on deck aspect that we are currently existing in. And people are stepping up like never before. And, it's funny, what I am celebrating about the 4th is the increase in the number of volunteers that have stepped up. You may or may not see huge indivisible gatherings or huge, marches, but there's what Richard Nixon kind of called the silent majority. And I think we've got a lot of silent Democrats that, may not say or do much, but they show up to volunteer. And they volunteer whether it's at a homeless shelter or, medical facility, whatever it is. people are starting to show up to help. Food banks. People are really paying attention to food banks, and they're offering to help. They're offering to work to distribute the goods. They're offering to deliver. So America still has this kind of connectedness in its grassroots, and that's why I spend so much time talking with city council members and school board candidates and that because it really does come down to the grassroots. That is usually most people's first experience with government. And it could be, the policeman having a chat at your school, which, may or may not be a good idea. Um, but we've got to just kind of remember this brotherhood that we are e pluribus unum. I mean, it's on our currency for a reason. Out of many, one. And that's the brotherhood and the crowning glory of America that Friedman sees. And honestly, it was interesting the way he related, uh, brotherhood of being that which is, which he is celebrating. And I just thought I'd kind of draw that home. But something else I want to mention is something else we need to be first at. And we need the First Nation to prove that we can take like I say, take this e-pluralism and make it where, uh, you know, and that diversity pays and that people can get along for the common good. And once you take the American oath of citizenship, you get the full rights and benefits, equal rights under law. And I think that's of the Supreme Court building. And what's Constitution? No, it's not on Constitution Avenue. But whatever it is, equal justice under law. That's why the scales of justice. That's why the woman is blindfolded, because no one is supposed to be treated better or worse than anybody else. And again, as a general proposition, we deliver on that. We're clearly a little lacking in the in getting fair judicial opinions these days. But let's just remember, stick together through this and work hard as Democrats. I encourage everybody or anybody listening to watching to go ahead and join your local Democrat club. It pays off like you would not believe. It shouldn't be super expensive. I'm hoping $20 to $30. And God, if it is if you're in a place where the club charges, I don't know, $50 or so, use the PayPal pay in full no interest thing. This is just vital. So, and like I said, as we and as imperfect as we are, and it really kind of hurts with watching what's going on in Venezuela. We used to be the first people to send just massive amounts of aid in a gesture of goodwill, and it seems like that's been squandered. If America has goodwill, it's in very select places, and probably not with the governments. The people, I'm sure, would get along, but the governments do impose policies that frankly don't help, and in this case are just outright destructive. However, like I said, I think Michelle Goldberg uh, wanted to highlight. She's celebrating the fact that as imperfect as we are, we're still a refuge. As bad as it is now, America is still, I don't know if it's I'd like to think it's the best place in the world. I'd like to think California is the best place in the world. Uh, but clearly the states has advantages of size and kind of isolation that very few other countries have. When Zelensky was in the White House and he told Trump about how he was relatively safe because he had a big ocean separating him from rivals in Europe and rivals in Asia, uh, things come home to roost anyway. They as Zelensky, well, it was funny. He got thrown out of the White House and got lectured, and now he's really kind and he's offering drone help to the United States. And again, I'm sure that Zelensky has some sort of corruption problem in the government, but I also think it's extremely hypocritical for Trump, who wrote the book on that kind of stuff, to call him on that. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, I really don't see a whole lot of difference between what Zelensky does. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. As a matter of fact, it's funny. I just got how about that? As I was just talking about Donald Torres, lo and behold, let me go ahead and bring Donald on. And Donald, you there?
Hey, B, thanks for having me.
Oh, good deal. How are you?
Good. How's it going?
I tell people it's like the radio show. All things considered, it's okay.
Good, good. Thank you for having me.
Oh, and believe me, the pleasure's mine. And I guess and if you're running for reelection and from District 1 as City Council in Stanton, correct?
I am, yes. In 2022, I was elected for the first time. I ran a really good campaign where a lot of residents supported me, and I actually won when I was 22 years old. So now I'm 26, running for reelection again.
Congratulations in more ways than one. That's always so. Tell us, what was the moment that you decided to run? What did it? What was in the beginning? There's always the thought of deed or something that pushes somebody to action.
Yeah, well, I was looking at my local government. I think that our local government needs better representation. So I saw that our incumbent didn't decide to run. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to give folks a voice and fight for the good fight. So I decided to run, and I got a lot of good reception from residents. It was really great.
Well, we're certainly glad you won. And so tell me, just Stanton has what, like 39,000, 40,000 people, something like
Yep.
that?
Around 40,000 residents, yes.
Okay. And I assume that there's some advantages to working with the smaller numbers like that. I assume it's more tight knit and more community. Am I right?
Yeah, when you run a campaign in Stanton, you have to prepare to walk and walk because it's such small districts. Every knock matters. Talking to residents matters. Neighbors know each other really well. So it's essential that once you get to a neighborhood and you knock, you know about their issues and the neighbors as well.
So, and does Stanton have any particular problems that you're working on?
Yeah, as every other city, we deal with people who are unhoused and making sure that they're able to get the resources they need. It's about expanding resources. One of the interesting things I see going on in our county is that folks who are in homeless shelters stay there for over a year. And that creates a backup system where folks can't get into shelters and get the resources they need because folks who have been there for over a year can't get into permanent supportive housing. So I think it's important that we expand these resources available so folks could get into permanent supportive housing, could get the help they need, and just continue on with their lives.
We owe everybody an opportunity to get ahead in life. And if you're at a homeless shelter for a year, you probably don't have that opportunity to get ahead in some way. Even though there's some support there, there's God knows how many people that could benefit by also getting in. Uh, and Don, just out of curiosity, I think I remember, didn't Ronald Reagan, after he closed the mental hospitals and ended that sort of involuntary incarceration, didn't he also, so the people went on the streets, didn't he also cut the Section 8 housing? So he turns mentally ill people on the streets and then takes away whatever subsidized housing. And I think that just compounded until we're where we are today.
You're right. There's a lot of consequences from that era that we're still dealing with. If it's the ability to deal with folks who have a mental illness and adequately being able to give them the resources they need. But yes, we need more investment from every level of our government. I see a lot of cities do their part when it comes to providing shelter, providing resources, but we need the state and the federal government to step in and give us those resources.
Is Stanton's homeless problem fairly manageable, or is it just wildly out of control?
It's definitely manageable. We've increased our deputies. We have a lot of good feedback from our residents that they're able to see our folks out there, making sure that they respond to calls in adequate time. We work with our sheriffs to go ahead and try to address any issue with folks. We have our homeless outreach coordinators at the city of Stanton, whose job it is to provide folks resources. So I believe in providing resources for not only management of the current issue, but prevention as well. I think that's something that multiple governments have kind of, dropped the ball, where we're not providing resources to get folks into that care, especially detox. I think that's important for our county.
Why are there any other sort of prevention aspects besides the detox that you're thinking of?
Yes, 100%. I think it's education, making sure that residents are aware when their family members are using, or making sure that they know where to go to get Narcan, to make sure that they could get good information. So we may be able to basically let folks know what are the dangers of partaking in specific drugs, and making sure that we have good resources, and socially we are aimed towards helping folks and not shaming them.
I am all for giving Narcan out or making it available almost as a drink dispenser. Just because somebody ingests something doesn't mean they deserve to die.
Mhm.
And I just, when people say, oh, well, they injected whatever it was, I'm like, assuming the worst, do they still deserve to die? And my thought is, I don't think so.
Unfortunately, we've seen a cultural recoil at our homeless folks, and it has been gone towards the worst. And I think it's important that we remind our neighbors that we are all one step away from being in the shoes of these folks who are sitting outside. So I agree.
Oh, particularly in California, I mean, a steady paycheck may or may not, see you through as long as you need it. Oh, what's the thing? There was too much month left at the end of my money. And I think that's kind of thing. And so tell me, what kind of lessons did your mom and dad impart to you that you've been able to use as a politician?
Yeah, so when I was little, my mom was the president of Unite Here Local 681, and then later Local 11. My mom took me to negotiations, to protests at the Disney hotels. At the Hilton by the Disney, we would go ahead and protest. My mom would take me to City Hall when unions needed legislation passed. My mom just basically taking me to union events taught me how important collective bargaining is. I remember as a kid, I was so shocked when a worker would come on their lunch break to yell and strike and to protest and just be together with their workers to demand more. That to me was very shocking. And that early on imparted in me a want to give a voice to our most vulnerable. I think it's important that at least if we're able to talk about their issues, someone will listen and there'll be more action towards those issues.
Well,
So mhm.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No worries. So seeing people's collective struggle really wanted me to help and give people a voice, but not only give people a voice, but to organize the community, just like how union members do.
I tell people without a union voice, the only voice is management. And that, how unfair is that?
It's true. Workers need a bigger voice at the table. We need a bigger seat. And I think that unions are a good way to achieve that. And that's why I love the model of collective bargaining and making sure that everybody's voice is represented at the table.
Wow. Well, I got to tell everybody that Donald's mother was like one of my heroes, Ada Briseño, and Ada has led. Oh, I started unions, led unions, negotiated. She's just a real force of nature, and I'm really lucky to call her friend, and I'm glad we were able to persuade Donald to come on today. But now that I've kind of gushed over your mother, what kind of long term goal, or do you have any long-term goals or things that need to be changed in Stan, or are we just kind of touching up?
Yeah. So when I got onto city council, there was a lot of deciding votes that I was a part of. One of them was making sure that we moved off the Zoom pilot program, where we just had a pilot program on Zooming, live streaming our city council meetings, and I made sure that we made that permanent. Not only we made it permanent, but I also upgraded the audio system so residents could hear. And at the time, there was debate as to whether we should continue that pilot program or not. Additionally, we have a council member who's been on council since 1989, and I thought it was important that we put term limits. So I was the deciding factor on putting term limits on the ballot last election, and that passed overwhelmingly, thankfully, by Stanton voters. So it's really important that we see things to reform our city to make sure that things are functioning perfectly as always. I think that we should focus on making sure that our renters have good representation, making sure that renters understand their rights, making sure homeowners also understand their rights as well is really important. We have 10 mobile home parks in our city. I think it's really important that council focuses on mobile home parks and they listen to their concerns and their voices. But additionally, there is things that I tried on city council that I'll be pushing for again, like for example, expanding the definition of what an immediate family member is, so we may ban those types of contracts when it comes across to the city. Or there's good things that we can do, like campaign finance reform. At one point, I tried to reduce the campaign finance limit from $5,900 to only $1,000. So I think that there's a lot of good work that we can do, especially in our city. We need to make sure we get things like a climate change impact plan. We have to make sure that we go ahead and assess our elderly population through a senior assessment plan as well, so we could go ahead and add a lot of the amenities that are needed for when everybody ages.
You know, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So there's a lot to do.
Well, yeah, I made a statement earlier that it appears to me as though there are more and more people stepping up to volunteer at food banks, at homeless shelters, and what have you. And I just wondered if that had proven true.
Yes, I have a lot of residents who have asked recently, especially with the incident we went through with GKN, how can we help? We have a lot of residents who help at our local food drive. We have Boy Scouts that help at our local food drive as well. So monthly, the city helps coordinate a food drive. So yes.
I got to that GKN catastrophe was just, oh my God. I thought about it. I'm like, God knows how many people could be wiped out because of a not a factory, but an industrial facility in the middle of residences. So I think that between you and your mom, things worked out as good as they could have. But anyway, moving on from GKN, how many districts are there in Stanton? Council districts.
Apologies. There are 4 districts, but apologies for the previous question you cut out. We had some technical difficulties.
Oh, don't worry about it. Oh,
okay. Yes, there's 4 council districts. I'm running in District 1, and this upcoming November is our election. And residents in my district should see me popping up in their neighborhood soon.
Do you guys have a healthy voter turnout?
I think it's important that every city has a higher voter turnout. I'm definitely not happy with the amount of residents that come up and show to an election, because I want more residents to be engaged. So it's always a point of mine to not only hit high propensity voters, but also low propensity voters. I want our residents to be engaged in our government. So that's going to be my focus definitely this time around.
Well, I am pretty capable about impressing upon people how important it is to vote. So if you want to have somebody call in and preach to it, tell whoever it is to call in 949-629-3820, and let's hear their pitch as to why people should vote. And maybe we'll get some more people involved that way. Mm-hmm. So don't tell me, are you just as a curious matter, are you married with kids or anything?
Yeah, so I work at Western High School part-time as a social emotional mentor and tutor, where I help students who are at risk. I teach them skills to be able to cope. I help them with their homework. I'm just there daily as a part of helping students graduate and basically grow confidence in themselves. So it's a really good job, but most importantly, it has showed me the necessities of my community, because I am working with the most at-risk students. I see their needs. I see what is needed, right? But most importantly, what type of care they need. Just as, a little spitballing out here, because I see so many students who need help, I think it would be great at every one of our schools if once per semester, a student could visit a social worker, even if they don't talk to them, but just getting them in front of somebody, I think is important, because we need those resources and residents need to know about those resources as well.
Does that require a new ordinance, or how does that implemented?
I think that would be implemented through the school district, if there would be any grants or any funds allocated by the school board. But I think it is necessary for our kids to get in front of folks who could provide them resources, because we just don't know. We have to be informed better. and I think that that's a good way to do it.
My granddad had always impressed upon me that, we owe kids. It's not like they asked to be here. We brought them in, we have obligations. And to raise a healthy, happy child should be the general rule and not the exception. And if a social worker visit helps, then, please tell me how I can help. I'm happy to yell about it every day on the program.
Well, thank you. I've been yelling about it too. So
Okay, and I may even be able to come up with a little, cute slogan or something. We'll see how my mind works out. Uh, so, Don, is there anything you'd just like to say if I gave you just an open mic?
yeah, I think that there's a lot of good things that are happening in the city of Stanton. We've been upgrading our rules around motels. We've been making sure that Beach Boulevard is kept nicely. We are getting grants constantly to make sure we are going above and beyond for our residents. And I want residents to be better connected with our city. I think it's essential. I want our city council meetings to be packed, just so residents know. I think a better, well-informed constituency is important. We see a lot of consequences, not only in my city, but in several other cities, when you see a lack of communication and connectedness between residents. So it's a really big goal of mine to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on and how we could better our government.
And when everybody's aware and when the city council is packed, that's when there's a grassroots connection, and that would make me a really happy guy to see those things overflow.
Mm. And it's important that politicians not only represent their residents, but ensure that a bench is being built. So I'm making sure that we have residents who look more like their constituency and act like their constituency to be on that council. We have many committee members and commissioners who are great candidates for city council. And I think it's important that we have people engaged and regular everyday residents running instead of just two politicians running every time.
Well, it seems to me as though you have a very clear-eyed vision of this, and you were clearly right with campaign reform and term limits. There's that inertia thing. Body at rest is to stay at rest, and the truth of the matter is we need some shake-up. And I don't see anything wrong with having term limits. I don't really know why people don't like them. Well, I guess those would be the vested interests who don't want things to change. But God knows, I hope those two things are addressed on a national level sooner rather than later. Right. Well, Don, I can't thank you enough for joining us this morning, or this afternoon rather. And please know if there's anything we can say or do, I'll be happy to scream your name from the highest rooftop. And I want you to know that, a few things. Number one, you're always welcome. And number two, that we're a phone call, or I'm a phone call, and email, or text away. And if I can ever do anything, please don't hesitate.
I appreciate it, Abby.
Good deal. Don, thanks a million. And you know what? Before you go, I'm just kind of getting good with this. But ladies and gentlemen, Donald Torres. Okay. I say, if we can say or do anything, let us know. And if not, hasta luego.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, all. Take care now. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Donald Torres, council member, District 1, Stanton, California. And I am going to do something that I'm going to, let's see here. Where's that thing? What I'm trying to do, here we go. And Guys, sorry about that. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. We almost had a an adult catastrophe. I have been needing to go answer the call of nature for since before Donald came on, practically since the show started, and I need to I need to apologize. I hope I didn't seem too hurried towards the end, but God, it was almost a 32 fluid ounce mistake, and God knows I would hate for that to happen. But we'll send Donald a little note and hope things are okay. And I want to take a minute and revisit a few things Donald had said. And the first thing is the kids and having a visit from a social worker. Families are different these days, and I know people that have no idea who their dad was, and you need some sort of a connection with people, and sometimes a social worker can spot a potential hiccup in a child and really make a difference. My great aunt Mary, as a matter of fact, was a guidance counselor at a high school back in Charleston, and Aunt Mary was just a really quiet, soft-spoken woman who could see what was the best in any given kid, any given child, student, and try to guide them on a path that would realize their gifts and help them succeed and be a productive member of society. And I think that's kind of all really what most of us want, is just to be to work and be able to have food, clothing, shelter, maybe a vacation every now and then. And things are clearly a little awkward right now, except if you are a Republican with a crooked disposition. And like I said, there's no difference between what Donald Trump is doing in my mind and backing up a fleet, a convoy of tractor trailers, and just telling them to shovel the cash right in. I mean, he's stealing so much, it can only be a wire transfer. You can't possibly deal with that kind of money. And, like I said, inertia. A body at rest tends to stay at rest. A body in motion tends to stay in motion until acted upon by an outside force. And that's why it's at least one reason it's kind of tough to beat an incumbent. You're automatically the underdog. And while David may beat Goliath, he may not beat him every time. And at least with some sort of campaign finance reform, everybody kind of gets the same amount to play with, and the field is equal. And, wasn't that, getting back to equality, isn't that kind of the deal here? E pluribus unum, out of many, one. I would submit to you that this term limits and campaign finance reform are clearly necessary. I mean, you can't count. Who are you going to count on to fix this? You can't count on the Supreme Court that gave us Citizens United, that led to unlimited dark money, and that is funds that are not directly disclosed, or who paid for it, who paid for the ad. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Instagram and Facebook at least make you put on the ad that you paid for to your political something, and you paid for this. But campaign finance reform, to the ability to give $5,900 to in a city council race, that really does seem kind of skewed. And guys, isn't that what we just want? What's fair in America? That's all I think an American can ever ask. If you're at the plate and if it's dead center pitch, then it's a strike. If it's wide left or wide right or way inside, it's a ball. We just need someone to call it honestly. And, we've got 3 Supreme Court justices that do, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson. And I'm going to tell you why Kamala Harris did not win that election. Just as a matter of who she was running against, I have no earthly idea. I mean, who in the world? Well, and I know the answer to this. Who in the world thought that after January 6th alone, much less anything else, Trump deserves another shot? And an older friend of mine said, "Well, I thought he'd be better on the economy." And I looked at him just incredulously, like, I cannot believe a word you're saying. And he looks at me and says, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I don't know what I think, but I'll tell you what I know." And I pulled out a 4-page sheet of Trump business failures. Like, and not to mention the fraud convictions and all that. I'm like, the guy's a known liar and scam artist. And furthermore, the banker business all have the same pattern. He goes in, pays whatever it is for it, finances it, declares bankruptcy, keeps the property, and doesn't have to pay for it. I mean, he just, unless it's a pattern between the airline and whatever else he did. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to hold up two polar opposites to you. I'm going to hold up Donald Torres on one side, and I'm going to hold up Trump on the other. And let's look at just like, and I told you that I thought Donald was a man of integrity, credibility, character, and honesty. And let's just kind of see how, I don't know, let's see how the honesty argument lines up. I think Donald Torres's background is such that, you can bet that he's telling the truth. His actions in the past conform to his views, and he's a straightforward guy. As opposed to the orange-chinned subhuman being who's currently occupying the White House. New York won't let him run a charity because when he ran, he donated money and bought his own portrait. I mean, the guy's always been self-interested, and it is only about Trump. And you guys that voted for him, you're completely responsible. I mean, don't try to slough this off on anything or anybody or any foolish belief. I'll be the first one to tell you that the Biden withdrawal from the race was messy and could have been sooner. I get all that. But I also believe in not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. Sure, there were mistakes between President Biden and Kamala Harris, but you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And you knew Kamala Harris would have made a good president. And you knew Trump would make a bad president. Just even if he only saw January 6th. And I still ask people to this day, exactly what else did it take? I mean, like after January 6th, how could you vote for the guy? And at that point, I think they realized that they were swindled. They were swindled out of their vote. They were conned or swindled out of their vote by Don the Con Trump. It's a, like I said, as much as we need to find reasons to celebrate, I look at, and I used to live in D.C. and worked on Capitol Hill and, spent like 2 years there. And to think that, the National Mall, excuse me, won't have a July 4th with, like the Marine Band and Stars and Stripes Forever and fireworks and red, white, and blue. To think that that's been turned into a pay-for-play Great American State Fair is just ludicrous. And just to show you how ludicrous, sorry guys, I got to put a jacket on. Just to show you how ludicrous this is, wasn't the fee to participate in this Great American State Fair like $100,000 or so? I mean, some states just, some just refused out of principle and others just couldn't afford it. So you kind of left with a MAGA type of fair. And I guess MAGA type of fairs attract maggots. And so on and so forth. But even July 4th, the nation's birthday, Trump just stole it. He stole it from us. He stole it with his UFC cage match, and he stole it with the Great American Fair, State Fair, and and you have to realize it's what he is and what he does. He's never been an honest guy. He's always stolen. And oh, by the way, if these allegations about the 13-year-old uh, sex trafficked girl that had been uh, brutalized or victimized by Trump with some physical harm, if that comes to see the light of day, and he doesn't resign, and he won't, and you know why he won't? Because it's a hoax. Anything he doesn't like is a hoax. Uh, but that could just do it. I mean, when you rape a 13-year-old child, uh, even though she's presented to you on a silver platter, like a gift of some sort, a delicacy of some sort, uh, that doesn't that gives you absolutely no special rights. I mean, just because if a 13-year-old is naked in front of you, it's just so be it. You don't, hands off. But it's like those old arguments where people would blame the woman in a sexual assault case, saying she invited it, she dressed for it, all that. And the truth of the matter is, women, like everybody else, get to dress the way they want. And you're not to infer one thing or the other from the way someone's dressed. Even though I think we both know, when somebody has kind of skimpy clothes walking up and down the street, you might assume they are a working girl. But as a general proposition, women can wear sexy clothes if they want. I don't, that whole and blame the victim thing. I never would tolerate. Oh, guys. So tell me, July 4th is coming. You guys got cookouts coming up, and it's Daytona 500 weekend or Darlington. Oh, I think it's Darlington. I think. Now, Darlington is near Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And I think they used to call the Firecracker 400. And if I'm not mistaken, that track was like paved over oyster shells or something. And it's got some really heavy toll on tires. And I'll have to see if I'm right. But, way back when, you could watch a NASCAR race and drink a Budweiser, and that would qualify you as being a patriot. But I'm going to reframe that question for today. What does it take to make you a patriot? And I think patriots are made by standing up to power exercised unfairly. And patriot that comes from the father, from the root word patron, father. And the country's supposed to be like the father to us. Guys, like I say, we need to all be patriots. We need to understand that we are a nation of laws, not men. That even though the Supreme Court uses this ridiculous originalist intent argument, and by the way, there's no way that the founders meant for the Constitution to be interpreted solely within its four corners. And what these guys claim is that if there's no specific right in the Constitution, then it doesn't exist. And that was one of the things with Roe versus Wade. They just didn't want it to exist, and they overturned. They found the notion of a privacy right wasn't in the Constitution. So, you might have the right to be secure in your papers and possessions. But again, don't forget, it's always up to who interprets that. And ultimately, in the U.S., you have a judge, a neutral, or hopefully a neutral arbiter that makes the decision. But again, Trump so contaminated the system, and he does this by he doesn't hire according to competence. And let me let me say that one more time. Competency, the ability to do the job well, is not a requirement to get a job with Trump. Is that not staggering? You don't have to be good at what you do to get a job. What do you have to do? Obey me. And the rest is a, becomes a really sordid history fairly quickly. And it is a chapter in modern American history that historians will ultimately get correct. But the whole notion of Trump rewriting history is absurd, even though we're seeing it before our eyes. To this day, people will swear that there was election fraud when there was none, which was the reason that got called the big lie. I mean, think about what that's caused the country and how much that's cost. Um, I'm almost flustered when I think about those kind of things, and especially when I look back on President Biden, President Obama, and President Clinton, and I wasn't a particularly George Bush fan, but and by the way, I don't think he was particularly decent guy. He got some Republican things through that weren't particularly helpful, but that's another story. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's closing in on 1 o'clock, and you know what? I'm going to go ahead and check out in a little bit. I've got to see if I'm getting my car spawned here in California so I can renew the registration. And guys, think about what Donald said: campaign finance reform, helping kids, looking out for the homeless, making sure things are more or less affordable, and just these days governments have to, as much as they advocate for citizens, they have to protect them too. And it sounds like if that there could not be a person better suited to solve Stanton's problems than Donald Torres. Then that's Torres, and the URL is Torres for Stanton.com. Torres, Torres, Stanton.com. If you can, drop by the website, tell them hello, tell them how much you enjoyed the chat. And if you can spare $5, $10, $20, whatever it is, please consider making a donation. Just say he has our endorsement. Wholehearted support is to understate it. We look forward to helping Donald any way we can. Of course, I hope you'll see fit to send periodic video, and like I say, people like that are always welcome. So, guys, on that cheerful note, as soon as how my my throat's starting to tickle a little bit, we're going to go ahead and call it a day on this Monday, July 29th. And, guys, you know what we always say about this time? What is it? Oh, I thought you never asked. It is something like, Roger,